Among history's most remarkable figures, two women stand whose strength and legacy still echo across centuries. Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld and Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Let us begin with the first, Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld. Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld was born on the 17th of August in the year 1786 in Coburg, within the Holy Roman Empire. What shaped the girl who would one day be mother to one of Britain's most powerful queens? How did she rise from a German duchy to navigate royal marriages, political schemes, and bitter rivalries? And what secrets were hidden behind her refined poise and maternal silence? The answers lie in a life shaped by loyalty, ambition, and reinvention. Please watch my full video until the end, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please make sure to share it with your friends. Thank you. Now, let us dive into the full story. Victoria's early life was marked by the ornate formality of the German courts. She was the seventh child of Duke Francis of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld and Countess Augusta Roos of Ebersdorf, a well-connected couple whose children would soon interlace Europe's royal families. Surrounded by aristocratic tradition, Victoria grew up in a household that emphasized political marriage as both duty and opportunity. Her brothers included Ernest, who later became Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and Leopold, who would ascend to the throne as the first king of the Belgians. In this world of dynastic ambition, Victoria quickly learned the value of alliances and the burdens they carried. She was not destined for quiet domesticity. Instead, her path would be one of careful calculation and lasting consequence. Victoria's family was one of Europe's most influential dynasties, and their ambitions shaped the course of her life. Her father, Duke Francis of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, presided over a small but politically agile duchy in the German lands. Yet it was not through land or military might that this house rose in prominence. It was through marriage. With each generation, the family forged bonds with powerful royal houses, extending their reach from Prussia to Portugal and beyond. Victoria's siblings were carefully positioned within this strategy. Her brother Leopold's marriage to Princess Charlotte of Wales in 1816 brought the family into direct alignment with the British royal succession. Though Charlotte died young, her brief union opened a path for Leopold to later become King of the Belgians, making Victoria's family deeply entangled in the shifting power dynamics of Europe. Victoria herself, as a daughter in this ambitious house, was expected to marry not just for love, but for strategy. Her childhood was steeped in the awareness that she was not merely a noblewoman, she was a vessel for political alliances. With every court gathering and formal introduction, her future was shaped not by personal wishes, but by dynastic necessity. This lineage, rich in titles and expectation, positioned her at the heart of European affairs, even before she wore any crown. Her destiny was being written long before she realized the full cost of it. At the age of 17, Princess Victoria entered into her first marriage, a union that would elevate her to the title of Princess of Leiningen. On the 21st of December in the year 1803, she wed Emich Karl, Prince of Leiningen, in her hometown of Coburg. This marriage was not only politically prudent, but also deeply interwoven with her own family circle, as Emich Karl's late first wife had been Victoria's own maternal aunt. The alliance reinforced long-standing ties between noble houses and placed Victoria in a respected position as the consort of a reigning prince. Their marriage produced two children, a son, Karl, born in 1804, and a daughter, Fedora, in 1807. As Princess of Leiningen, Victoria embraced her role with grace and discipline. She managed court life, ceremonial duties and family responsibilities with a sense of balance that would later define her reputation. Yet behind the appearance of courtly routine, Victoria's life was already being shaped by shadows of future loss. Her husband's health began to falter in the early 18-teens, and Victoria, still in her 20s, was confronted with the weight of coming widowhood. By the time Emmett Karl passed away in 1814, Victoria found herself in a role few young women imagined, that of a ruling regent for her underage son. Her transformation from consort to sovereign guardian would mark a turning point in her personal strength and political maturity. The death of Emmett Karl in July of 1814 thrust Victoria into a new and uncharted role, that of regent for the Principality of Leiningen. Still in her 20s and grieving the loss of her husband, Victoria now carried the responsibility of ruling on behalf of her young son, Prince Karl, who was just 9 years old. It was an extraordinary position for a woman in early 19th century Europe, where female sovereignty was often challenged or dismissed. But Victoria handled the regency with unexpected resolve. Her years as regent revealed her innate political skill and capacity for leadership. She navigated the principality through its obligations, finances, and foreign relations with caution and determination. Advisors initially viewed her as a temporary figurehead, but she quickly earned their respect through her thoughtful governance. She did not attempt to change traditions or reshape the court. Instead, she focused on stability and preservation, ensuring her son's eventual transition to power would be smooth and unchallenged. This period also revealed Victoria's growing ability to balance public duty with private sacrifice. She was now a widow, a mother, and a ruler, roles that demanded emotional restraint and constant diplomacy. Despite the limitations imposed by her gender, she operated within her station with grace and competence. By the time her regency ended in 1818, Victoria had proven that she was far more than a passive royal consort. She was a capable guardian of power, a quality that would soon attract the attention of the British monarchy. In the aftermath of Princess Charlotte's untimely death in 1817, a royal crisis unfolded in the British monarchy. With no clear heir to the throne, Parliament urged the unmarried sons of King George III to find suitable wives and produce legitimate heirs. It was within this delicate moment of dynastic urgency that Prince Edward, Duke of Kent and Strathearn, turned to a familiar and respectable choice: the widowed Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld. Victoria accepted his proposal, and their marriage took place on the 29th of May in the year 1818 at Schloss Ehrenburg in Coburg, followed by a second ceremony on the 11th of July at Kew Palace in England. It was a union built not on romance but necessity, a calculated alliance between two houses striving to secure political continuity. For Victoria, this meant exchanging her quiet principality for the demanding world of British court politics. Despite their late union, the couple moved swiftly. They relocated to Germany to save costs, but soon returned to England when Victoria became pregnant. The pressure was immense. The child she carried could potentially inherit the British throne. Victoria, now Duchess of Kent, entered the final months of her pregnancy amidst careful planning and logistical rush, determined to give birth on British soil. What began as a marriage of diplomatic convenience soon evolved into a crucial chapter in the monarchy's history. The future of the British crown and Victoria's lifelong legacy would soon rest in the hands of the daughter she was about to bring into the world. On the 24th of May in the year 1819, Victoria gave birth to a daughter at Kensington Palace in London. The child was named Alexandrina Victoria, a name that would, in time, become etched in British history as Queen Victoria. From the moment of her birth, the infant princess represented far more than familial joy. She was the monarchy's quiet hope, born into a period of dynastic uncertainty. Victoria, now Duchess of Kent, understood the significance of her daughter's arrival. With King George III's other sons facing troubled or childless marriages, young Alexandrina's path to the throne was not improbable. Her mother, ever politically astute, ensured the baby's birth occurred on English soil, a calculated move to secure national loyalty and legitimacy. Behind the scenes, figures like Sir John Conroy were already strategizing for the future, recognizing the political value that this child would soon hold. Yet amidst the optimism, there were shadows. Only 8 months after the birth, Victoria's husband, the Duke of Kent, died suddenly of pneumonia in January 1820. Grief-stricken and newly widowed, Victoria found herself once again navigating life without a partner, but this time in a foreign land with a royal infant to raise. Her daughter's future was now her singular focus. The Duchess, ever determined, tightened her circle of advisors and resolved to shape the young princess with discipline, devotion, and ambition. The birth of Alexandrina Victoria had changed everything, for her mother, for the monarchy, and for the fate of an empire. The death of Prince Edward in early January of 1820 left Victoria, Duchess of Kent, a widow for the second time, this time in a country where she was still seen as an outsider. With little command of the English language and few allies at court, she faced an uphill battle for dignity and survival. Kensington Palace, once a royal residence of prestige, became her modest home. There, she occupied a crumbling suite, surrounded by other impoverished members of the extended royal family. Financially strained and emotionally isolated, Victoria turned to her brother Leopold, now the widowed brother-in-law of the British Crown. His annuity from Parliament offered a lifeline, but it came with limits. Parliament, weary from the Duke of Kent's past debts and extravagance, offered Victoria minimal support. She was forced to navigate royal politics while depending on foreign-born kin and her own resolve. Raising her daughter, Alexandrina Victoria, in these reduced circumstances became Victoria's central mission. She was no longer just a duchess. She was the guardian of Britain's possible future queen. Her daily life, once filled with ceremonial duties and courtly gatherings, shifted toward education, discipline, and preservation. Every decision, from tutors to social exposure, was made with one goal: preparing her daughter for the throne. It was a period marked by hardship and pride, a quiet chapter of resistance in the face of indifference, where the Duchess of Kent refused to fade into obscurity. Faced with an uncertain position at court and a lack of financial autonomy, Victoria, Duchess of Kent, sought to protect her daughter's future through strict control. Alongside her trusted advisor, Sir John Conroy, she developed what came to be known as the Kensington system, a rigid and highly structured plan designed to isolate and mold the young Princess Alexandrina Victoria into a disciplined, obedient monarch. Every moment of the child's day was accounted for, from private tutoring and religious instruction to carefully supervised social interactions. The system's central aim was to make the princess wholly dependent on her mother and Conroy. She was never allowed to be alone, not even to walk down a staircase unaccompanied. Contact with her paternal family, especially her uncles and the royal court, was severely limited. Victoria and Conroy feared outside influence might undermine their plans, especially the possibility of the princess forming independent loyalties. Though outwardly framed as protective parenting, the Kensington system was steeped in ambition and control. Conroy hoped that when Alexandrina ascended the throne as a minor, the Duchess would be appointed regent, with himself as her most powerful advisor. For Victoria, it was a way to preserve her position, maintain respect, and secure her daughter's rise in a court that had long excluded her. But behind the well-manicured routines and moral guidance, cracks were beginning to show, for the system bred not affection, but quiet resentment. A future queen was growing up, not in joy or confidence, but in guarded silence. As the Duchess of Kent tightened her grip over her daughter's upbringing, tensions with the wider royal family deepened. Her German heritage, firm control, and alliance with the increasingly unpopular John Conroy made her an object of suspicion among the British royals. Many believed she was manipulating the young princess for personal gain. This distrust grew sharper as the Duchess consistently limited Alexandrina's contact with her uncles, especially King William IV, who viewed her behavior as both disrespectful and politically dangerous. The royal feud came to a head during court ceremonies and public appearances. The Duchess refused to attend certain events and even denied her daughter's presence at the king's coronation over disputes of precedence. Conroy, meanwhile, was nicknamed King John by members of the court, mocking his attempts to rule from the shadows. The queen consort, Adelaide, tried to extend goodwill, but the Duchess remained cautious and guarded, convinced that only her inner circle could be trusted. These struggles were not simply family quarrels. They were battles over influence. The Duchess hoped to control the narrative around her daughter, while the king feared being sidelined by a foreign-born widow and her ambitious advisor. The conflict became so bitter that, during a banquet in 1836, the king publicly declared his wish to live long enough to prevent Victoria's regency. These words, spoken in front of guests and the young princess herself, stung deeply. The rift was undeniable. Yet even in the face of humiliation and resentment, the Duchess held her ground, determined that no royal power would obstruct her daughter's path to the crown. The fragile relationship between the Duchess of Kent and King William IV soon unraveled into open hostility. The Duchess, wary of the king's illegitimate children and disapproving of the court's atmosphere, kept her daughter distant from royal circles. Her refusal to allow Princess Alexandrina to attend court events was seen as an act of defiance, further aggravating the monarch. The king, in turn, viewed the Duchess's behavior as controlling, ungracious, and deliberately isolating. At the heart of their feud was the question of influence. William feared the growing dominance of John Conroy and the Duchess over his young niece. He was determined that no regency would take place under their control, a concern that intensified as Alexandrina neared the age of majority. The king's frustration finally boiled over in August of 1836 at his birthday banquet, where he delivered a stinging public speech. With the Duchess and her daughter present, William declared that he prayed to live 9 more months, long enough to see Victoria come of age, thus preventing her mother from becoming regent. The outburst shocked the guests and left a lasting impression on Victoria, who quietly absorbed the tension. Though the breach between the king and Duchess was never healed, the incident laid bare the battle for authority over the future queen. For the Duchess, it was a humiliating moment, but she refused to retreat. Instead, she and Conroy continued their public tours and appearances with Victoria, determined to maintain their hold on the narrative, even as the king's patience wore thin. As Princess Alexandrina Victoria approached her 18th birthday, the Duchess of Kent intensified her efforts to shape her daughter's image and secure her own influence. With King William IV aging and childless, all eyes turned toward the young princess. The public, curious and increasingly sympathetic, watched as Victoria toured the kingdom with her mother, carefully staged appearances designed to present her as the future monarch. Behind every speech and gesture was the guiding hand of the Duchess and her advisor, John Conroy. But despite their planning, time was not on their side. The king, still resolute in his opposition, clung to life with tenacity. He refused to allow the Duchess any ceremonial authority and worked to keep his niece out of formal state matters. Yet with every passing month, Victoria's status grew. Parliament had declared that should she ascend to the throne before turning 18, her mother would serve as regent. This looming possibility created tension that hovered over the court like a storm cloud. The Duchess, meanwhile, found herself increasingly isolated within the palace. Her relationship with her daughter, once close, had grown strained. Victoria resented Conroy's pressure and her mother's constant control. Though outwardly obedient, the princess began forming her own opinions, quietly preparing for the independence that would come with the crown. When William IV finally passed away in June of 1837, just weeks after Victoria's 18th birthday, the Duchess's hopes for a regency were dashed. Her daughter would rule in her own name. And though Victoria had reached the throne, the distance between mother and queen was already taking root. The transition from mother to monarch was not easy. Once Queen Victoria ascended the throne in 1837, she immediately distanced herself from the shadows of her childhood, especially the influence of Sir John Conroy. The Duchess of Kent, once poised to become regent, was now relegated to separate quarters. Her political influence abruptly ended. The rift between mother and daughter, born from years of control and isolation, became painfully clear. But time and circumstance softened the divide. The turning point came after Queen Victoria's marriage to Prince Albert in 1840. Albert, the Duchess's nephew, saw the emotional strain between his wife and her mother. He also understood the importance of family unity within the royal image. With Conroy now in exile and Baroness Lazen, the Queen's longtime governess and critic of the Duchess, removed from court, the atmosphere slowly shifted. Prince Albert encouraged reconciliation, and the Queen, now more mature and secure in her authority, began to welcome her mother back into her inner circle. Victoria's old wounds were not forgotten, but they no longer defined their relationship. The Duchess, for her part, stepped back from public ambition and embraced a quieter, more affectionate role. She became a proud and devoted grandmother, enjoying renewed warmth in her daughter's household. It was not the political legacy she once envisioned, but it was a deeply human one, marked by healing, humility, and unexpected grace. In her later years, the Duchess of Kent embraced a quieter existence within the royal household, no longer a figure of political ambition, but a grandmother surrounded by growing generations. After the birth of Queen Victoria's first child in 1840, the atmosphere shifted further. The Queen, now a mother herself, began to view her own with greater empathy, recognizing the weight of past decisions through the lens of personal experience. The Duchess took on her new role with calm dignity. She was often present at family gatherings, portraits, and christenings, where she doted on her grandchildren with genuine affection. Her influence now came not through court intrigue, but through familial presence, her steadiness offering a symbol of continuity for the royal family. Though still somewhat reserved in public, behind closed doors she offered warmth, guidance, and stability. By then, her public image had softened. The once feared and fiercely strategic matriarch was seen as a resilient figure who had endured personal loss, political struggle, and public scrutiny. Her earlier actions, once viewed with suspicion, were now recognized as a mother's desperate attempts to secure her daughter's future. Though her days of court strategy were long over, the Duchess remained a respected presence at Windsor and Frogmore. Surrounded by grandchildren and at peace with her daughter, she found a quiet fulfillment in family, something her earlier years had rarely allowed. Her final chapter was not one of power, but of reconciliation, reflection, and lasting maternal pride. Despite the peace she found in her final years, the Duchess of Kent remained a subject of speculation and rumor. Chief among them were whispers that Queen Victoria's true father might not have been the Duke of Kent. These claims stemmed from the sudden appearance of hemophilia in the royal line, a disease with no prior history in the British monarchy. Some theorized that the Duchess had engaged in a secret affair, possibly with a man carrying the genetic trait. However, no solid evidence ever supported these claims. Medical experts later concluded that hemophilia can arise through spontaneous mutation, especially in the children of older fathers, which Edward was. Moreover, some studies pointed to lingering signs of porphyria in Victoria's descendants, a disease that had plagued earlier generations of British royals. Such contradictions only deepened the mystery and fascination around the Duchess's legacy. Beyond rumors, public opinion of Victoria evolved over time. Historians began to view her not only as a controlling mother, but as a woman who had been thrust into an impossible position. A widow navigating foreign politics, royal suspicion, and dynastic expectation. Her efforts, however imperfect, ultimately succeeded. She had raised a queen. In art, film, and television, the Duchess of Kent has been portrayed as both stern and sorrowful, a woman whose love often took the form of discipline, and whose ambition was deeply intertwined with maternal fear. Her legacy remains complex, but undeniably significant, etched into the very foundation of Victorian monarchy. As the 1850s turned into the 1860s, the Duchess of Kent entered her final decade of life with a sense of quiet reflection. No longer entangled in court conflicts or dynastic ambitions, she found comfort in the rhythm of family life. At Frogmore House in Windsor, she spent her days surrounded by her grandchildren, tending to gardens, reading letters, and participating in royal events with calm dignity. The tensions of her earlier years faded into memory, replaced by gentle routine and restored closeness with Queen Victoria. Though she rarely spoke publicly, the Duchess remained a quiet force within the royal family. She offered guidance, shared memories of European courts, and acted as a living link to Queen Victoria's origins, a reminder of the path that had brought the monarchy to its modern era. Her presence was particularly cherished by Prince Albert, who saw in her a figure of stability and tradition. In these final years, Victoria also began to better understand the sacrifices her mother had made. Through the reading of her mother's personal letters and papers, the Queen came to recognize the depth of the Duchess's love and the immense pressure she had faced. The Queen later confessed to feeling heartbroken over the years of estrangement and blamed John Conroy and Baroness Lazen for the painful distance between them. The Duchess of Kent passed away peacefully on the morning of the 16th of March in the year 1861, at the age of 74. Queen Victoria was by her side. Her burial in the Duchess of Kent's mausoleum at Frogmore was a solemn tribute to a life marked by duty, devotion, and perseverance. Her influence, once questioned and often criticized, ultimately helped shape the longest reigning queen in British history. And in that legacy, her name quietly endures. Let us now turn to another remarkable figure of royal descent. Princess Victoria of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha was born on the 14th of February in the year 1822 in Vienna, within the Austrian Empire. How did this soft-spoken princess, born to a powerful European lineage, become a silent thread in the tapestry of royal Europe. What legacy did she leave behind after walking between the courts of Vienna, Paris, and London? And how did her gentle nature shape the lives of emperors, queens, and revolutionaries alike? Victoria's birth brought together two powerful bloodlines. Her father, Prince Ferdinand of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, descended from the influential Coburg family that spread its roots across Europe's thrones. Her mother, Princess Maria Antonia Cohary, was the wealthy heiress of a Hungarian princely house. Their union blended Protestant German heritage with Catholic Hungarian nobility, a dual identity that would define much of Victoria's early life. Raised in the cosmopolitan city of Vienna, Victoria grew up surrounded by opulence, diplomacy, and dynastic expectations. She was the niece of Queen Victoria's mother and a cousin to Queen Victoria herself, Prince Albert, and several other prominent royals of the age. Her elder brother, Ferdinand, would become King of Portugal, while her extended family included the future King of the Belgians and Empress Carlota of Mexico. From an early age, Victoria was trained in languages, court customs, and the quiet decorum expected of royal daughters. Though her childhood was not marked by scandal or hardship, it was shaped by the silent pressure of duty, the expectation that she would one day marry into power and carry with her the grace of her illustrious house. Victoria of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha belonged to a dynasty that had quietly become one of the most interconnected royal houses in 19th century Europe. Her paternal grandfather, Duke Francis of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, had engineered a series of strategic marriages that extended the family's reach across Britain, Belgium, Portugal, and later Mexico. These unions transformed a modest German duchy into a dynasty with global influence. Her father, Prince Ferdinand, was the second son of Duke Francis and Countess Augusta Roos of Ebersdorf, making Victoria the niece of Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, the Duchess of Kent. Through this connection, she became the first cousin of Queen Victoria and her husband, Prince Albert. Such bonds were more than symbolic. They reinforced a pan-European network of loyalty, power, and cultural exchange. Victoria's maternal heritage further expanded her family's reach. Her mother, Princess Maria Antonia Cohary, was the only daughter of Ferenc Joseph Cohary, a Hungarian prince with vast estates in Slovakia and Hungary. The Cohary inheritance added immense wealth and Catholic lineage to the Coburg family, resulting in the creation of the Catholic Cohary branch of the Saxe-Coburg house. With siblings, cousins, and future in-laws spread across the continent, Victoria's life was inevitably shaped by politics and marriage diplomacy. Every letter exchanged and every court gathering served not only as family contact, but also as subtle reinforcement of dynastic unity. In such a world, even personal relationships were intertwined with strategy. And Victoria, from her earliest years, was a silent yet central figure in this web of royal design. Victoria's childhood unfolded within a household that balanced two powerful traditions: the German Protestant rigor of her father's Coburg lineage, and the Catholic nobility and Hungarian legacy of her mother's Cohary roots. This dual heritage was not merely cultural. It was woven into every aspect of her upbringing, from the languages she spoke to the customs she observed in her daily life. The family's base in Vienna placed Victoria at the heart of the Habsburg-dominated Austrian Empire. There, she received a classical education typical for young noblewomen, including music, French, court etiquette, and religious instruction. Her governesses were carefully selected to reflect both sides of her background, ensuring that she could one day move with ease between the courts of Central Europe and beyond. Though the Coburg name brought her recognition, it was the Cohery wealth that sustained her family's lifestyle. The estates in Hungary and Slovakia, inherited by her mother after the death of Prince Cohery, offered financial security and a strong link to the lands of the old Hungarian aristocracy. This wealth enabled the Coburg-Cohery branch to hold its place among the top European dynasties, despite the relatively modest power of their German duchy. At home, Victoria grew up in a quiet yet cultured environment. Her parents valued discretion, religious devotion, and intellectual polish. Family visits were frequent, often including her Belgian and Portuguese cousins, giving her an early understanding of how closely her life was tied to Europe's royal fabric. In this calm but carefully orchestrated world, Victoria developed the poise and sensitivity that would define her adult years. One of the most defining relationships in Victoria's life was her deep and lasting bond with her cousin, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. Their connection was not only familial but emotional, strengthened by shared bloodlines and parallel upbringings within the Coburg dynasty. Despite growing up in different countries and speaking different native languages, the two Victorias were kindred spirits, bound by loyalty and mutual understanding. Their relationship blossomed during Victoria's youth, particularly through correspondence and occasional visits. As the daughters of siblings, Prince Ferdinand and Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, the girls were first cousins. Yet while Queen Victoria rose to become the ruler of a global empire, her cousin Victoria remained a more private figure, operating within the quieter sphere of courtly life. Their friendship deepened after Victoria married into the French royal family and later moved to England following the Revolution of 1848. During this period of political upheaval, she became a frequent guest at Osborne House in Claremont, enjoying both refuge and companionship in the Queen's circle. Queen Victoria, often reserved and cautious in her relationships, referred to her cousin as one of her dearest confidantes, a rare and meaningful bond amid the formality of royal life. In letters and private gatherings, the two women found comfort in their shared heritage and similar values. They both understood the pressures of royal duty, the limits placed on women of their rank, and the delicate balance between personal desires and public expectations. This connection became a quiet constant in both their lives, a private alliance in a world often ruled by public image and political convenience. In April of 1840, at the age of 18, Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha entered into a marriage that would link her fate with the royal house of France. On the 27th of that month, she wed Prince Louis, Duke of Nemours, the second son of King Louis-Philippe of France. The ceremony took place at the Château de Saint-Cloud, a symbol of Bourbon-Orleans grandeur, and marked the union of two powerful dynasties, the Coburg-Cohery line and the French royal family. Though politically advantageous, the match was also said to be personally agreeable. Prince Louis, a reserved and dutiful man, shared Victoria's quiet temperament and appreciation for modesty. Together, they embodied the restrained elegance of 19th-century royalty, never flamboyant but always dignified. Victoria embraced her new role as Duchess of Nemours with grace, adapting to French court life and fulfilling her ceremonial duties without seeking public attention. The marriage strengthened ties between the British, French, and Belgian monarchies, and was seen by many as a step toward greater dynastic unity in post-Napoleonic Europe. Victoria's family, already spread across the continent's thrones, saw her marriage as further proof of their political significance. As Duchess, Victoria took up residence in French palaces and began a new chapter filled with both promise and subtle constraint. While her status elevated her position in society, it also confined her to a life of public expectation and royal formality. Still, she approached her new life with humility and care, determined to be a loyal wife, a devoted mother, and a dutiful representative of both her birth and adopted houses. Victoria's entrance into the French court at the Tuileries and St. Cloud marked a dramatic change in her daily world. The House of Orleans, though constitutional in structure, still retained the grandeur and ceremony of old-world royalty. As Duchess of Nemours, Victoria was expected to master the intricacies of court life, balancing decorum, diplomacy, and dynastic symbolism in every public appearance. Yet, unlike more flamboyant royal figures, Victoria remained a model of discretion. She never courted attention or scandal. Her modesty, intelligence, and refined manners earned her quiet admiration among courtiers and foreign diplomats alike. She attended state events, received guests with grace, and participated in charitable causes, all while maintaining a distinctly reserved presence. She was not a political voice in the public arena, but a silent pillar of dignity in a turbulent age. Her husband, the Duke of Nemours, was equally restrained. Their partnership was marked by respect and a shared sense of duty. Though the French royal family's power was constitutional and fragile, they represented a vision of modern monarchy rooted in national service rather than absolute authority. Victoria adapted well to this balance, upholding tradition without resisting progress. Behind the ceremonial veil, Victoria found moments of intimacy and joy within her growing family. The couple's first children, Gaston and Ferdinand, brought new meaning to her role as Duchess, as she blended maternal responsibilities with courtly obligations. Her grace under pressure became especially notable as political rumblings stirred beneath the surface of French society. In this setting, Victoria's understated strength made her stand out. She was not a queen nor a ruler, but she was a royal who moved with quiet purpose in a palace built on fragile ideals. In the winter of 1848, the calm of Victoria's life was shattered by political upheaval. The French Revolution of 1848 erupted with startling speed, toppling King Louis-Philippe and ending the July monarchy. For Victoria and the Duke of Nemours, the shift was more than a crisis of state. It was a personal fall from grace, forcing them to flee the country with little warning and no certainty of return. The royal family scattered across Europe in search of refuge. Victoria, with her husband and young children, made her way to England, a familiar but changed landscape, now viewed through the lens of displacement. The grandeur of the Tuileries was exchanged for quiet exile at Claremont House in Surrey, an estate lent by the British Crown. It was here that Victoria began to rebuild a life far from the public gaze. Exile tested her resilience. Though stripped of titles and formal duties in France, Victoria retained her dignity. She found solace in family and in her continued bond with Queen Victoria, who welcomed her cousin with warmth and sympathy. The British Queen provided not only comfort but a community, and the Duchess of Nemours became a regular presence at Osborne House and royal gatherings. Still, there was no mistaking the sorrow of her changed status. Victoria had once stood at the heart of French court life. Now she lived in the margins, a duchess without a court. Yet in the face of revolution and loss, she carried herself with unwavering grace, a quiet example of endurance in a world transformed by unrest. Victoria's life in exile slowly found a rhythm within the safety of English soil. Though her position at the French court had vanished, she discovered a sense of continuity in the familiar landscape of Britain, a land tied to her lineage, language, and loyalties. At Claremont House, she and the Duke of Nemours established a quiet household that blended French custom with British hospitality. The estate, surrounded by gardens and wooded hills, became a haven not only for Victoria but also for her growing family. Far from the pressures of political life, she dedicated herself to her children's education and well-being. Her eldest son, Gaston, and his siblings were raised with a deep respect for duty, history, and resilience, virtues that Victoria herself embodied through the trials of exile. Despite the sadness of their departure from France, Victoria made no public complaint. She lived with a calm dignity, strengthened by her correspondence with Queen Victoria and her continued connection to the British royal family. These ties offered both emotional support and occasional invitations to court, where she was treated not as a fallen duchess, but as a valued member of the extended Coburg family. She also quietly involved herself in charitable efforts and religious observance, maintaining the piety that had guided her since childhood. In a world where monarchy had proven fragile, Victoria chose steadiness and silence over bitterness, finding meaning in her roles as wife, mother, and observer of changing times. Though exile had reshaped her path, it had not diminished her presence. In England, Victoria reclaimed her sense of identity, not through power, but through peace. Claremont House became more than just a residence. It was a sanctuary where Victoria could raise her children and preserve the dignity of a royal life without a throne. The estate offered privacy and tranquility, allowing her to create a stable home during uncertain times. It also served as a place of quiet reflection, far from the noise of revolution and exile. Victoria's bond with Queen Victoria continued to flourish during these years. The British monarch frequently invited her cousin to Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, a favorite retreat of the Queen and Prince Albert. Within these circles, Victoria was treated not merely as a guest, but as family. Her children played with the Queen's offspring, and their shared lineage became a bridge between two royal households navigating different fates. At Osborne, Victoria found a warm reception, despite the formality that still lingered within the British court. She was appreciated for her discretion, warmth, and maternal devotion. These visits provided her children with access to cousins and royal customs, while also offering Victoria emotional renewal. Her presence in such intimate royal settings reminded the Queen of their shared Coburg roots and reinforced a sense of European dynastic unity. Claremont and Osborne, though different in style and rhythm, symbolized a life rebuilt with grace. Between the wooded lanes of Surrey and the coastal views of the Isle of Wight, Victoria wove a quiet but enduring chapter of royal exile, one marked by connection, memory, and the careful preservation of family legacy. In the calm that followed exile, Victoria found her greatest purpose in motherhood. With quiet determination, she devoted herself to raising her children with values rooted in faith, duty, and cultural pride. Far from the formalities of a royal court, she created a nurturing environment at Claremont, blending continental traditions with British sensibilities to shape a new generation of Coburg Orleans descendants. Her children, including Prince Gaston and Prince Ferdinand, were educated not only in history and languages, but in humility and perseverance. Victoria ensured they were fluent in both French and English, aware of their dual heritage and respectful of the legacy they carried. She oversaw their lessons, guided their moral development, and protected them from the instability that had driven their family from France. Despite the loss of titles and a kingdom, Victoria never allowed her children to feel diminished. She emphasized character over crown and instilled in them a sense of quiet nobility. Letters from this period reflect her gentle but firm parenting style, full of affection, discipline, and emotional attentiveness. Her sons would go on to forge significant roles in European society, Gaston eventually becoming Count of EU through marriage into the Brazilian imperial family. Through her unwavering presence and calm strength, Victoria shaped her children not for power, but for resilience. In doing so, she ensured that the values of her lineage would endure, not through throne rooms, but through the lives of those she guided with care and love. Throughout her years in England, Victoria remained deeply connected to a wide web of royal relatives across Europe. As a member of the Coburg family, she was related by blood or marriage to many of the continent's most powerful houses, including the British, Belgian, Portuguese, and even Brazilian royal families. These bonds were not merely symbolic, they shaped her personal and political world in meaningful ways. Her cousin Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom remained a central figure in her life. Their shared ancestry and mutual respect fostered frequent correspondence and personal visits. At court gatherings and family reunions, the warmth between the two Victorias was evident. They found in each other a reflection of their upbringing, values, and struggles with public expectation. Victoria also maintained close ties with her brother, Prince Ferdinand of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, who became King Ferdinand I of Portugal. Their correspondence bridged not only personal affection, but also dynastic continuity. Her children, too, were raised with an awareness of their broad familial network, forming friendships and alliances that transcended national borders. These connections gave Victoria a quiet but enduring role in royal diplomacy. She was not a political actor, yet her position as a trusted confidante to multiple courts allowed her influence to ripple softly through conversations, introductions, and letters. In an age of shifting empires and uncertain thrones, Victoria stood as a symbol of interwoven royal legacies, her life a thread in Europe's vast dynastic tapestry, binding together nations through kinship, memory, and grace. Victoria's life was a delicate dance between cultural identities, born in Austria, raised within the German Coburg traditions, married into French royalty, and exiled in England. Through these layered experiences, she cultivated a quiet but steadfast understanding of her duty as a royal woman navigating different worlds. Her identity was not rooted in a single nationality, but in the enduring values of dynastic service, grace, and family loyalty. She remained fluent in several languages and observed the customs of each court she had passed through, yet never seemed divided in loyalty. Instead, Victoria embodied a rare unity, a living example of how royal bloodlines stretched across borders, carrying with them not just alliances, but obligations. Whether supporting her husband's legacy in France, raising her children with British manners, or writing to her Portuguese relatives, she moved fluidly across cultural boundaries. Victoria also held on to her faith as a grounding force. A devout Catholic, she practiced her religion quietly but consistently, attending Mass and observing religious rites that connected her to her upbringing in Vienna and her role in French society. Her modest expressions of belief added depth to her understanding of duty, not as spectacle, but as a sacred trust passed through generations. In the quiet halls of Claremont and during visits to royal households, Victoria fulfilled her role without fanfare. She represented more than a fallen duchess. She was a carrier of Europe's intertwined heritage. Through personal restraint and unwavering dignity, she turned cultural complexity into a noble calling. By the early 1850s, Victoria's health began to show signs of quiet strain. Years of emotional resilience and physical demands had taken a toll, though she rarely complained. At Claremont House, her Her days remained filled with family responsibilities, social correspondence, and visits to court, yet beneath her calm demeanor, fatigue lingered. Her final pregnancy, though embraced with grace, arrived at a time when her body was already weakened. This sixth child, conceived amid the comfort of family life, was expected to bring joy. But as the months progressed, Victoria's strength continued to wane. Friends and relatives began to notice her pale complexion and increased rest. Even Queen Victoria, who maintained close contact, expressed concern in her letters. Despite the best care available, the Duchess's condition became increasingly fragile. Still, Victoria remained composed and spiritually prepared. She continued to write letters, guide her children, and observe her religious devotions. She did not let illness define her final season. Instead, she welcomed each day with a quiet readiness, as if preparing her household and heart for whatever lay ahead. Those closest to her later recalled a serenity in her presence during these final months, a deep awareness that her time might be drawing to a close. Yet she bore it with the same restraint and dignity that had marked her entire life. In her final pregnancy, Victoria faced not just the hope of new life, but the gentle, solemn shadow of mortality. In the spring of 1857, as anticipation quietly grew for the birth of her sixth child, Victoria's condition worsened. On the morning of the 10th of November, she went into premature labor at Claremont House. Though the family and medical staff rallied around her with urgency and care, it became clear that both mother and child were in grave danger. Hours later, the Duchess of Nemours passed away, alongside her newborn son, who survived only a few hours. The news rippled through royal circles in Britain and across Europe. Queen Victoria was reportedly devastated by the loss of her beloved cousin, expressing her sorrow in personal letters and court mourning arrangements. For the Duke of Nemours and their children, the suddenness of Victoria's passing left a hollow space in their lives. The home that had once offered refuge now stood steeped in grief. Though only 38 years old at the time of her death, Victoria had lived a life marked by grace under pressure, from court splendor to exile, from royal pageantry to private sorrow. Her passing was mourned with quiet dignity. The funeral was modest yet reverent, reflecting her character and the respect she had earned beyond titles or politics. In her final moments, Victoria left behind a powerful legacy, a life of quiet strength, maternal devotion, and royal duty lived without arrogance. Her farewell was sudden, but her memory endured, woven into the hearts of her family, the records of royalty and the echoes of those who understood that true nobility often lives not in power, but in poise. After Victoria's passing, her memory lived on not in grand monuments or political achievements, but in the hearts of those who knew her, and in the silent influence she left across royal Europe. At Claremont House, her children grew up surrounded by quiet tributes to her values, a favorite prayer book left on a shelf, letters folded with care, and portraits that captured her composed gaze. These were not relics of power, but of presence, tokens of a mother, wife, and duchess who had shaped lives through steady love. Her husband, the Duke of Nemours, withdrew from public life for a time, carrying with him the profound grief of losing not only a partner, but a companion in exile. He ensured that Victoria's memory remained central to their children's upbringing. Her sons would go on to marry into other royal families, their mother's teachings reflected in their grace, discretion, and devotion to duty. Across the Channel, Queen Victoria continued to honor her cousin's name. At Osborne House, where family portraits lined the walls, the Duchess of Nemours remained a cherished figure, remembered for her soft voice, her inner strength, and her ability to unify different royal worlds with humility. Letters between the British and French royal families often invoked Victoria's name, a symbol of harmony between two nations once divided by revolution. Even in Portugal and Brazil, where her Coburg relations held sway, Victoria's legacy was invoked as a model of noble endurance. She had never worn a crown of her own, yet through her example, she taught that the weight of royal life could be borne without bitterness or display. In every role, daughter, cousin, wife, mother, she upheld a quiet majesty that transcended borders. Victoria of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha left no throne behind, but she left something greater, a reputation of gentleness, wisdom, and unwavering dignity. Her life proved that influence does not always need titles. Sometimes, it simply needs grace remembered. What do you think about Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld? Was she a resilient duchess, a woman who guided two royal houses with wisdom, survived personal tragedy, and shaped a future queen through love and discipline? Or was she a misunderstood figure, isolated by court tensions, controlled by a strict household, and remembered mostly through the shadow of her daughter's reign? And what about Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha? Was she a gracious royal, navigating exile, motherhood, and duty across shifting kingdoms with humility and strength? Or a quiet presence, lost in the backdrop of greater powers, her voice barely echoed beyond private letters and forgotten halls? Were these women the silent anchors of royalty, or simply footnotes in grander tales? Did their grace shape the destinies of empires, or did their sacrifices disappear beneath the titles they carried? In their silence, we find strength. In their lives, we glimpse the quiet courage that history so often overlooks. Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales from the past. Stories of courage, choice, and the quiet force behind history. Thank you so much for watching.